Hey guys, welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. My name is Brian.
And my name is Maggie.
And we interview Asian entrepreneurs around the world to amplify their voices and empower Asians to pursue their dreams and goals.
We believe that each person has a message and a unique story from their entrepreneurial journey that they can share with all of us. Hi everyone, welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. My name is Maggie.
My name is Brian.
And today we have a very special guest with us. His name is George Chao. And George is the founder and CEO of Uniworld Omniport and is an expert in consumer product development and direct-to-consumer e-commerce. George founded his first e-commerce brand, BBO Poker Tables, in 2006 and is the leader in the poker and home gaming niche, and later started Omniport Consulting in 2014 to help brands and companies create scalable products and sell more effectively to customers through e-commerce. In his career, George has developed products with and for many prominent brands spanning a wide range of product disciplines. George, welcome to the show.
Yeah, George.
Happy
to have you
Thanks
here.
for having me.
Also,
Brian and Maggie.
Definitely.
Network.
Want to throw out that George and I are actually in the same fraternity back in undergrad.
Wow.
Super happy to have a former alumni that's so successful in the show.
You know, without that connection, I don't think I'd be in the Asian Hustle Network because, you know, funny story, when I think pretty early in the infancy of AHN, I started getting some fraternity buddies pinging me. I think it was like Mark Weber and Mark Chen. It's like, join this AHN thing, join this thing. And, you know, I'm busy. It's another Facebook thing that popped up. Like, what the hell is this? Right? Like, I ain't got time for this. But they're like, oh, LTD's running it, you know, our fraternity. And I was like, just like, you know, most Asians go, oh, I got a connection to you know, the founders. Then it was all love after that. So
I'm super happy to have met through the group and, you know, figure out that our alumni are doing so well, you know.
Yeah. So let's jump right into it. George, can you tell us a little bit about your background, you know, where you grew up, where you were born, what your family situation was like? You know, were they a very traditional Asian family or were they, you know, laid back? Tell us more.
Well, thank you for that. And yeah, absolutely. So I was born in Taiwan, and I was there until I was 8 years old, which is like first grade. So my Chinese, although I won't get lost, is not like really super awesome, right? But both my grandparents, my mom's side, my dad's side, were from the KMT, you know, nationalist government coming over from China during the Cultural Revolution. So, you know, I grew up in Taiwan, and when I was 8, we moved to my dad moved us to California.
Wow.
So when we came here, we went to you know, we landed at Daly City, which was, you know, still pretty Asian, so it was all right. You know, back in Taiwan, I was just a young kid running around, friends, carefree. You know, the Asian culture, just, you know, running around. All life was good. It was fun. All right, but once I got to California, Daly City's all right because there's a lot of Asians that are still kind of, you know, fit in. But in 6th grade, my dad decided to move us to Antioch, California, which is predominantly more white at that time in the mid 90s. And that was when I first got a unique, you know, sort of sense of what the U.S. is like, right? You get a lot of little racism, a little, you know, which I thought was super strange, right? Because growing up in Taiwan, well-adjusted kid running around, it was awesome, right? But you go to school here and it's kind of like, well, I don't know if being super nice is like the right like way here. You sort of have to be like a little tougher here, right? Or else they're just gonna, you know, sort of try to bully you and try to sort of power move these things like that. So I distinctly remember in 7th grade, you know, like enough was enough. I was like, you know what? I don't think being nice is sort of the way to get by here as an immigrant, you know. So one day I made up in my mind, you know, I had enough. Right. I remember very vividly, there's this kid, his name's Craig. He was like, you know, one of the biggest bullies there. And my intent for that day, I've had enough, right? I'm gonna punch Craig right in his face. That was literally what I said when I went to school that day. And it was pretty funny. I went to the schoolyard and I was looking for Craig, right? And before I found Craig, another kid, right, that was also sort of, bully, like I ran into him first, right? And I was like, hey, where's Craig? And he said something really racist. It was, like childhood stuff, right? Like playground stuff. He's like, hey, I don't know, but, why don't you get out of here before I shove some chopsticks up your ass or something like that, right? This is like 7th grade, right?
Yeah.
So now immediately my focus is I don't remember Craig anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I turn around and I hit this guy. I just remember his shoes just flying off, right? And it was a big thing in the school. I just had enough, right? Like that's kind of what I learned from, the U.S. It's a different world, right? So enough is enough. What was really funny about that story is actually after word got around, that this happened, Craig comes up at the end of the day and was like, hey, do you want to be friends? Because I heard what happened. I don't really want none of that, right? So that was the first, why I bring that up is because that's sort of, to me as an immigrant, that's sort of a vivid memory of how you have to be sort of in the U.S. as you go about your, your business and how, if you want to make something of yourself, you do have to be firm. You do have to be strong. And there has to be that line that you go, hey, right? So that was sort of childhood. Growing up, I played a lot of baseball. I went to UC Irvine, which is where we were in the same fraternity, although I was a couple of years older than you. After that, I spent some time in China. And that's where I really saw a couple things. International sourcing and manufacturing was just going over there. It was 2004, 2005, right? So everything was starting to get made in Asia. And also e-commerce was just starting to come up.
Right.
All right. So that was like eBay. eBay was like starting to sell cars. That was a big deal. Amazon still sold books. Right? That was a thing, right? Before Amazon was Amazon.
Yeah.
So really, it was really intriguing to me that, what if I really learned these two things that were emerging, which is scalable international manufacturing and also e-commerce, right? Those are two things of value. And it just interested me. So that's where I started focusing and honing understanding around, right? So after that, I came home, 2006, started my first company, built that up to a couple $1 million a year. Just the e-commerce side, it's been multi-million dollars for quite some years now. But in 2016, 17, I realized that I didn't have all of the firepower that I need to make it to the next level, right? It's like a couple $1 million a year. It's great, but I was having issues in terms of building the culture that I wanted. Right. So because of several reasons, I think we'll probably get into that a little bit more in the podcast, but I went back to school, went through the Stanford Executive Leadership Program, which is an amazing sort of 1-year program after you've sort of cut your teeth in entrepreneurship to really understand how to build that bottom-up leadership and what organizational culture and how to do all that, organizational building. Right. So that really sort of catapulted my understanding of what it is that I wanted to do and how to achieve that. That kind of brings us up to today. And somewhere along the line, I started a consulting company helping people make products and sell more things via e-commerce. So I'm a little ADD, so I like to chase shiny things. Right. So I like to solve problems, shiny things. So I'm kind of all over the place in terms of what I do. But the general, I guess, similarities and everything that I do is just, it's cool, fun, interesting products made, if you can think it, we want to make it sort of happen and be.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really great story too, especially about your childhood and being strong and firm.
Yeah.
I could totally relate to that story as well. I mean, I had a lot of incidents where people just picked on me. And I said, one day, this is enough. Like, I'm just going to stand up for myself and be a stronger person. And I can't understand exactly what you mean by having it sort of influence my adult life as well. Like I tend to like not be pushed around often, especially in the business world. Like people like to push you around because of your age, your ethnicity, your size, anything they could to like size you up, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to stay firm, especially for someone like Maggie too. She's very firm.
Same. Like I could attest to that too. I was bullied too, and then that was due to my size. And at a certain day, like you just know that you've had enough and you're just fed up. And I think that trickles down to a lot of your present mentality and how you shape yourself to be. So good job for you for standing up. I'm incredibly inspired by that.
Yeah, and going back to your story too, like that's amazing foresight. Most people back in college don't look at how the world works. They look at what's present. They look at like, okay, what's fun for me right now? Like, can I go to a nightclub? Can I drink more? They don't start looking at the world like you did. Like you saw these emerging trends. You're like, oh wow, they're great. But the key difference is you didn't just put it in the back burner like most people. You thought about it and then you took action. You overcome analysis paralysis, especially being so young and in the Asian fraternity too. Like that's amazing. Like how'd you overcome that analysis paralysis? And one day you woke up and you're like, hey guys, I'm gonna start this e-commerce business and let's do it.
And how did your parents react to that? Because I know, you went to UC Irvine and they probably thought you were going to go through this plan to get a job or something like that, So what was their reaction? And how did you overcome analysis paralysis?
So that's a great question. And background, I come from 3 generations of entrepreneurs, so they weren't so surprised, right? Okay. So my grandfather had a successful business in Taiwan in terms of a military radar because of his military background, and my dad is through and through an entrepreneur. So I was actually really bored at UC Irvine because I could not wait to go and do whatever it is that I wanted to do, right? I was just a C student. I just, whatever it took just to kind of get by, partied a lot, had a lot of fun. But I knew that, hey, once the chains were off, it's game on, right? So I was lucky enough to spend a year after college in Beijing. And that was like 2005, right? And that was just, in Beijing was the freaking Wild West. It was bananas, right? The renminbi exchange was 8-1. So for $1 you had 8 renminbi dollars. And at that point, if you had a US passport, you could not get arrested. I shit you not, right? You literally could do whatever you want. You wave that passport and they go, whoa, right? So, but the result of that was everybody that was in Beijing at that time, this is 3 years before the Olympics, right? So like, it was the Wild West and everybody was entrepreneurial. Everybody was looking for that angle. They just didn't know what it was going to be, but it was going to be something huge. You could sense it, right? There was so much energy there, right? And luckily enough, I'm always one of those people that like, I naturally have a problem solving mind, right? So, and if I latch onto a problem that you go, hey, this is a complicated problem, I bet you can't solve it. Then my competitive streak kind of kicks in. And then, I go, oh, I bet you I can. So, I will think about it nonstop, for weeks until I give you 4 different ways to solve it and go, ta-da, right? So in Beijing, that was what was going on at the time. It was scalable outsourcing, or scalable manufacturing, and it was e-commerce, right? So those are 2 big enough problems to sink my teeth into. And when we identified, and me and my group of friends, start identifying, hey, this is kind of where the thing is going. I could not stop thinking about that for like weeks on end, right? And that just sort of like lit that pilot flight that, basically everything snowballed out of. And Maggie, one more thing to go back to your original point about bullying. I think there's one thing that is very important that I've sort of, and it's not my saying, but it's you want to be kind, but you don't want to be nice, right? In terms of strength, right? Like nice is a pushover. Kind is you're strong and you're like, right? So you want to be, that's my motto. I want to be kind, right? I'm not an asshole, right? By any means, but you're not going to push me around, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Love that mindset.
You're going back to like that's pretty great that, you know, you came from 3 generations of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's awesome to hear, you know, a lot of people, especially my parents, I had to overcome a lot of barriers. I told them that I'm going to leave my job, and they're like, what? Why?
Yeah.
When I was unhappy, they're like, what's that? You know?
What's that? Yeah. What's that?
Yeah. A lot of them are like, what's entrepreneurship? You know, a lot of Asian parents, they don't know what that is. And a lot of them immigrated here so that we could find a stable job. So I'm really happy to hear, you know, you came from an entrepreneurial background, your family did as well. So, you know, you already had that foundation where you had that support from your parents. So, you know, going into e-commerce, would love to know, you know, what are some mistakes that you did that now looking back, you could tell yourself, hey, like, I wish I knew this,
you know, trace
at
it
that
back
time.
a bit too, and talk through your entire journey. Like when you started, how you raised money, how you made money, how you hired your first employee.
Yeah.
And hear everything.
Yeah. Some of the, you know, hurdles and mistakes that you did that, you know, our listeners could learn from in e-commerce.
Definitely.
So, great question, and this is a pretty fun one. There's a lot of, like, you know, being in e-commerce for 14 years, there's tons of stories, right? And we've been lucky enough to sort of conquer a niche, which is the poker table niche, which is a very odd niche, but thoroughly enjoyable and much fun going through it. So I started the company with once I realized these are the 2 things that I wanted to do. So I'm still in China. These are 2 things I want to do. And the next week I'm talking with my buddies. We had just finished drinking the night before. We were partying a lot at that time. Like, we were in the club maybe like 4 times a week, something crazy. So afterwards we were like, e-commerce, what do we do? You can literally do anything. Right. And we were like, well, you know, how about furniture? Oh man, that's heavy to do. You know, how about paintball? How about bicycles? Like, literally it was just like a list of interesting things to do. And finally I was like, hey, I play a lot of poker in college, and my buddy was like, I like poker. I'm like, I like poker too. Yeah, let's go do that, right? So it was the sort of the height of the poker boom back in 2005. We wanted to do something fun. So I came home. Once we sort of honed in on what it is that we wanted to do, I came home. I was like, hey, I think my time here is done. I'm going home. I'm going to start this company. I checked my bank account. I got $2,000 in cash. All right, I'm 24 years old. I come home and I connect with a factory in China, buying, you know, poker chips and small accessories, whatever I can buy. You know, I had to go through a handful of factories to find one that would even entertain a $2,000 PO, right? And when I was so excited, right? Like, send this random company money. I don't know due diligence. I don't know contracts. I don't know none of this stuff, right? I was like, yo, you're going to sell me stuff? I got money. Bow, right? So I hit them with some money, and stuff comes in. And at this point, I don't know really, like, you know, I know I want to get into e-commerce, but I'm not sure. I don't program. I don't code. You know, it's like, okay, eBay, maybe it's Craigslist, right? Just to get started. I would start at the San Jose swap meet to sell poker chips, right? But the first lesson I got is, all right, you better learn some quality control, because all the inventory, the chips that they sold me, they had like these stickers on it, right, for the denominations. The stickers, I think they just sent me some like fucked up inventory that they had, right? Every chip, both sides, the stickers would fall off, right? So I'm like, I got to do this. I got to do 2 things, right? I got to sell it to you, and I'd be like, yo, Brian, hold on 1 second. Turn around if I can glue these things on and give you a set, right? So as humble as you can imagine is sort of how we started. We started then going, hey, you know, selling these small accessories, you know, really is difficult because there's a lot of competition. The barrier to entry is pretty low, right? So I was looking around and I was like, you know what? Poker tables is interesting. Because at that time, there was 2 types of poker tables in the market. It was either super baller, handmade in the US, like $5,000, $10,000 per table. Or there was like cheap Chinese import poker tables, right, for like $200. And there was just a huge void. It was obvious, like, dude, why is nobody doing this, right? Nobody was doing it because it's fucking hard, right? It's not easy. Because once you start getting into sort of freight logistics, right, and operation, the OpEx of doing freight poker tables is very difficult, right? To try to do it at any sort of scale, right? So I finally get enough money from, selling little things, and I go all in on some poker tables, right? So I find another factory, I don't know them, right? I shoot over $10,000. That's like everything that I made, right? And I wait 60 days. Now imagine I had just all the money I made, I threw it back in, and I went in on new products with a new factory that I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. What are the chances that things are fucked up here?
Everything.
Yeah.
100%, right?
So much risk.
Not 100%, right? So
you did it too. You gave all your $2,000
How'd you learn, George?
savings, and then threw your
Gamble.
$10,000 to this factory that you didn't even know of.
Right. So I wait 60 days. I'm like so excited. And the day comes, the trailer comes and tows this 20-foot container, and we drop it. I remember it was 7 p.m. It was already dark. It was me and my uncle. He was just around. And I didn't realize that unloading a 20-foot, I didn't even think about this, unloading a 20-foot container full of poker tables is not easy, right? There's a lot of moving shit around, right? So I was so excited. We finally got to the end. I opened the box, and it was trash. It was so trash, right? So I was so upset. I was furious. I was like, oh shit, my company is over before it even started. Right? Oh shit. And I was pissed, and I went to my dad, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna call him right now, and I'm gonna curse him out, and I'm gonna just, and my dad's a very calming presence, right? He's a very logical person, so am I. He goes, yeah, you could do that. You're not gonna get your money back. Or you can buy a ticket, and you can go there, and you can teach them how to make what you want. Right. So this is 2007-ish. So next week I was in Ningbo, China. Right. So I walk off the plane, and I see this little pudgy, Asian business owner coming in. Young dude, couldn't have been 30 years old. Right. Carrying his little man purse. Right? He's running up to me. He's like, George. He's like, holds out his hand. Right. And I grab his hand. I just crush it. I literally just crush his hand. I feel him close to me. I go, did you send me that container of shit? Right? and then I grabbed him. I was like, get in the car. Right? And I spent a week at the factory redesigning every component of it, because what I learned was, right, yes, they make it in China, but they don't play poker in China. They make a thing because they know that it'll make money and it looks like a thing, right? Unless you actually go in, do the due diligence, and make the product your own, right? You could never depend on somebody and their iteration, their idea of it, right? And go, whoa, yeah, that's going to be good. There's 100% chance that's going to fail, right? So in 2007, BBO Poker Tables became the first company to have products that were designed correctly, but leveraging the scalability. And then as we started developing e-commerce, kind of grew market share, and we started figuring out the operational excellence component of it, which is how to get freight products across the U.S. quickly. Then we added customizations. We added dining tops that you can hide your poker table. It turns into a dining table, right? So all these different things allowed us to then start getting that momentum and getting that distribution up. And now today, this little brand with all those crazy stories is the official poker table brand of the World Poker Tour, the Golden State Warriors. We've been at sort of every black tie event that you can imagine. And if you see a poker table in a home that's not in a casino, there's a great chance that I sold it to you. And that's sort of the first company, right? And from now on, but the problem with poker, it's a very small market. So now you have to talk about, well, what's sort of next, right? And the next step is really home gaming. And the timing couldn't be better because everyone's stuck at home. Right? What's your option? to be on Instagram and scrolling all day, or do you figure out a way where you can actually connect with your family, with your friends, with your kids? Right now, that second proposition sounds pretty good, right?
Right, exactly.
So that's where we're kind of going in the home gaming space, right? Because we've already done what we can in the poker space. Now it's like kind of growing the product development.
Definitely. And I love that story too that you just told. It's basically business fundamentals. It's like you never assume anything. You know, you can never ever assume in business. Once you assume, you lose a lot of money. It doesn't matter if you're, you know, in poker or myself in real estate. I assume the contractor is gonna do it right. I come there, I'm like, all right, this is what I wasn't imagining. Or, you know,
exactly, yeah. Why didn't we come up with the same idea?
You know, like, okay, just put the bathroom tiles in there. You go there, it's like, wait a minute, why is it like laid out horizontally instead of vertically? You know, stuff like that. You're like, oh, and then you have to tear it all out and then like redo it. It costs you hell of money and time to do it.
Yeah. You know what that is? That is, and I tell my team this a lot, especially my management team. It's head in, hands out, right? So you don't want to do it, but you got to have your head in. You got to know what's going on every single piece. But you can't do it, because if you do it, what actually happens is you take, you know, somebody's opportunity of learning away.
Right.
Yeah. So you couldn't do it for them, but you need to know what the hell's going on.
Definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
And your dad also gave really, really good advice too. You know, had you just cursed them out, that's very unconstructive. You went there and became constructive. You know, you spent some time there and really got it down to the core and got it right.
Yeah.
And that story really, really reminds me of like Nike and how they started and Shoe Dog.
Yeah, Shoe Dog's a great book.
I know, very similar how Phil's like, yeah, I put in some orders in Japan and he came back and it was like not the type of shoes that we thought it was going to be. So I flew to Japan and taught them like how to like make shoes the way Nike makes it. And that really reminds me of your story too. It's like
the difference is that their market scope is like $1 trillion and mine is X. You know, mine is tiny.
But still, you took matters into your own hands, and you know the advice that your dad gave you goes such a long way. You know, and I'd also like to point out that, you know, when the idea came up about you going into poker chips and poker tables, it was just a mere like, I like poker. I like playing poker. You know, I think a lot of people get caught up of like, what is my passion? What am I in love with? What am I really knowledgeable or skilled about, right? And people get tripped up about that because they're like, I need to be really skilled at a certain industry in order for me to succeed in it, right? But you and your partner just pretty much said, I like poker, and that there's an opportunity right there. All right. And you open those doors for yourself. You don't need to be skilled at a certain industry, right? There's like e-commerce, drop shipping. You don't need to know, every single fact about that particular product, but you kind of, made that opportunity for yourself.
You have to like what you work on. Yeah. To be honest, it can be about anything, as long as you have a passion for it, you're going to find ways to like make it work. And for example, very off topic, but people who like to eat, so they make videos of themselves eating mukbang, very simple because they just like that topic. And it's something that we just have to pursue. Pick something that you don't mind doing every day. And make a business out of it.
Absolutely. And, when I say we, it's, I always refer to the team that I sort of work with. I do much prefer not to have like business partners. I like to be able to like do or die based on my own decisions, right? The accountability component of it. And I think, at the end of the day, it's really about creating value. It's value creation, right? And yes, you might love a thing, but if you're not focused on how can I bring value to whatever exchange or whatever situation that I'm doing, right? Then you're going to be like sort of chasing this thing that's hard to find. But if you just go, hey, I bring value into any, exchange or any transaction or any thing that I do, now that's where success finds you, right? It's the opposite way around.
Yeah. And it just goes back to like, it's funny how when you want something to work and you want it bad enough, the universe sort of just helps you get to that goal. It just subconsciously, you just start seeing opportunities that you're like, oh, wait a minute, if I talk to this person, if I connect with this person, if I learn this and that, this will get me to my goal. And that's crazy how the universe works, So along your real estate journey, like, have you met a lot of people that sort of just help nudge you in the right direction and just help you accomplish your goals?
Yeah, I absolutely. I think, in my entrepreneurship journey. When I went into it when I was 24, I was this kid that wanted to prove something. I was a single person trying to prove a thing. Along the way, you pick up, a team, right? And I think I was a little bit too young to understand sort of how to lead that correctly. Because I mean, when you first start, you start picking some people up on like Craigslist and whatever, just people that like help to get a thing done. You need somebody in the warehouse, all right, boom, plug that. But at some point, and for me, it was like just at like 10 people, right? The transition became from me trying to prove that I can do this e-commerce thing into, oh shit, I need to start being a leader now. And what does that mean? Because that's a complete different skill set than you trying to do a thing like well.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, that's, I think, for people starting out, I think the best advice I can give them is like, hey, there's going to be a transition. If you do it successfully and you start to see millions come through and you start needing to scale up, you're going to run into culture problems, right? Unless you know exactly how to align and set the culture of your team. And I needed to go through that. So at 32, the company was already a couple $1 million a year, and my consulting business was taking off. Like, I personally could generate, I can tell you exactly how much I can generate as a human being by myself doing that top-down business model. It's $5 million bucks. Right? It's $5 million bucks a year, right? And that's it. And you'll have a nervous breakdown, right? And because everybody's asking you for a thing,
Yeah.
right? And that is just like not capable of scaling, right? So when I was 32, I was like, I really looked in the mirror. I was like, man, I really don't like what I'm walking into every day. So I had 10, 12 employees at that time. I'm walking into work and I'm not feeling it. I'm like, man, I kind of hate what I built. And I'm like, I'm not sure if I have the right tools and skill set for this. And that's when I joined a CEO peer group, right? So this is super important, right? So I'm part of a Vistage. They're the largest CEO peer group in the world, right? And all of a sudden now, imagine this, I'm like 31, 32 years old, and now I'm surrounded in a group of 20 CEOs, minimum company size 5 million, up to $250 million companies. These dudes and gals are much older, much more seasoned, and now I gotta like learn from these people. I have to get my thoughts validated by these dudes that are just like, why? Right? And just like peering into and ripping what you think is right apart. Right. And then after that, I did the Stanford Executive Graduate Program. And only through that did I start understanding what sort of bottom up like leadership was. Right. And actually I had to nuke my entire company. I had to come up with, hey guys, here's the blueprint, here's the goal, here's how we're going to operate, here's our organizational design, game plan on how we're going to run our company. And the crazy thing is when you implement, systems that promote accountability, what happens is the non-accountable people, they're really allergic to that, right? So two things will happen. They'll either quit or things start getting very uncomfortable for them that, they'll end up leaving by themselves, which both options is fine. Right? It's all good. Right? So then I staffed and started aligning the culture towards what we want, which is trust and accountability within our groups, having our corporate goals correct, our mission, our vision, right? Where are we going? The inherent why are we here? Right? And then having the corporate goals, the sub goals, the personal goals tied to performance, right? Building that sort of structure took a lot to learn. And now with that, I've never been more proud or happier to walk into my organization because the team is aligned, right? They care, right? And they keep each other accountable. So no longer is everybody answering to me, right? Matter of fact, I'm knocking on their door going, hey, can I help you with anything? Like, can I do something? I'm like, I'm kind of bored. Let me do a thing, right? They're like, dude, get out of here. Everything you touch, screws up somehow. Stop touching stuff. We got this, right? So that's sort of what I learned is really important from.
Yeah. You bring a lot of good nuggets too. It's coming back to awareness, really. Like, I think the most successful people that we have on the podcast so far has a really high sense of awareness. Like, they're really aware of their actions, what makes them unhappy, and credit to you. Like, you took action again, and you're just like, hey, this is not working. I feel really unhappy. How can I make this better? Because when you read a lot of books and talk to a lot of different mentors that reach this type of level, you kind of just leave for a new venture. Just leave the company completely without fixing it. Whereas you have the courage to go in there and you're like, okay, I'm going to blow up the infrastructure to make sure that it's going to be well run. The culture is a lot better. And that takes a lot of courage, man, because essentially you're blowing your business model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I think a lot of entrepreneurs or business owners, they are reluctant to admit that they need help within their company. It's like it shows like a sense of weakness if you go seek for help in order to, improve your CEO capabilities. But you actually sought for help, and you were able to acknowledge like, okay, I know there's a problem within my company. I know that the culture is not there. And for you to go out to the CEO peer group and for you to, recognize, okay, these are the problems and I need help with this and that was able to translate to your knowledge of like how you can communicate better with your employees, And I'm very curious. So after the CEO peer group and after, Stanford, did you have to let anyone go yourself, or did it just like naturally happen and all of the non-accountable people just left naturally?
You definitely, it's a little bit of both.
Got
right?
it.
So when you let them know that, hey, this company is going to be built around accountability, right? Like I said, immediately the people that are allergic to that will fall off. I had people leave within a week of dropping that org design.
Wow.
Right? That was accumulation of, sort of the focus in Stanford and all this, like, this is how I want it done, right. In terms of keeping it accountable. And immediately within a week, like 3 people dropped. Wow. And then you'll see people try to hang on, but if you just keep focusing on those points, trust and accountability, they sort of take care of themselves for you.
Right.
Right. So the most important thing is like, all right, have your performance metrics of them, have them make sure that they know what their goals are trying to do, and then back it with accountability. They'll tell you if they should be here or not, right? Because it gets hot. That seat gets hot if you're non-accountable and you're missing your marks. It gets real hot, and normal people don't want to be there.
Definitely, and I can totally relate to the team building aspect of things and being a leader, especially a CEO, especially a founder too, because you feel like you're obligated to get your hands into every single department. But in actuality, you're doing more harm because this is outside your expertise. Like you may or may not know a lot about marketing, finances, and like business models that we're unfamiliar with. So we bring the experts. So let the smart people do their thing.
Yeah.
The most ironic part is that when you're running a successful company with great culture, it's built on trust, really. And without that trust, like you're not going to get any accountability out of your team, or you're not going to live up to their fullest potential because you don't trust them. Or ironic thing, it's like when you trust them, you do less work to the point where you're, as a founder and CEO, you feel hella guilty because you're like, dude, I'm not doing anything, But that's the ironic thing, because now it's like, okay, if you do that, you're no longer micromanaging. And they're allowing people to flourish in their creativity. But at the same time, you're building it in a way where it's really scalable, and it's up to you as a founder and CEO to keep these people aligned into your vision.
People love that. People want to be able to have that ownership.
Exactly.
Right? And if you don't give it to them, like, you're really just stifling their growth, and that's like not a good leader.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
And that kind of goes back to what we talked about, head in, hands out, right? You better know what the hell's going on. You can't just go, yo, autopilot, without understanding exactly what's going on, but not get in the way of them running, because that's really your goal, right? To get them to start running.
Yeah, 100% agree with that statement too, because you bring a lot of smart people. Most of the time, they have so much energy that literally they're just shooting in different directions.
Yeah.
As a leader, you just have to like gather them up and be like, all right, guys, shoot the energy in one direction, please.
That's all that leadership work is around sort of your mission and your corporate goals. Like a lot of my time is spent around crafting goals and the aligned vision of where we're going. That's really it, right? And then let the team do the thing. And you just support them, right? Whatever it is that they need, you try to give to them as long as it's a good idea, right? Not a blank check, but as long as it makes sense, like you support them, then that's bottom up leadership. I do have to drop one book that I think would help a lot of people listen to this. So we actually work off of the Patrick Lencioni 5 Dysfunctions of a Team model, right? It's a really quick read, less than 200 pages. He wrote it in the format of a story, so it's super interesting to read. And there's this model at the end that will help guarantee any team reach their results, right? It's a triangle. The bottom is trust, right? You must have trust. And they all built on top of each other. You must have the last thing in order to get to the next thing, or else you just go back. It goes trust. It goes healthy conflict, right? To be able to like argue a point without getting mad at each other. And you can't do that without trust, right? Once you have that, then you guys have to be able to commit to what the goal is as a team, right? If you can't do that, right? If you don't have healthy conflict, you can't do that, right? Then you drop back down. After commitment is accountability. If you can drive everybody into accountability, right? And everybody's pulling in the same direction, the last is results. And the cool thing about results is you actually don't have to work for results. If you knock out the first 4, you automatically get to results, right? It's a really simple framework that people understand. And once they understand, they go, oh shit. And everyone's talking the same language, right? Then they can self-assess. And then that's where peer accountability starts, right? And then now you can drive that message because they have a framework.
Yeah, 100% agree. And you feel the energy too when things are going right. And you're like, this is a great positive flow. Things are going really well. And you start in that way, when that happens, you as a leader typically become more innovative. You're like, oh, wow, like things are moving really straight. Maybe we could take in more complex projects.
And you have the time and the flexibility to think about how we can scale, right? No one is finally like no one is actually coming to you for all the answers, and they're communicating with each other.
The nitty gritties of the day that just weighs you down and distracts you from the bigger vision.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, just full disclosure for everyone listening, being CEO and founder is not easy. You know? To get to a level where you can trust people to do their work and innovate and take care of their own departments is extremely difficult. And it's not like a one-time thing where it's like, oh yeah, the department is working. And it will probably last for a couple of months before it burns again. You know?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a constant like evolution, right? Because you leave it alone for a second and it's gonna, it'll start like losing steam. Right. That's why a bottom-up leader is constantly always just adding fuel to that and supporting, right, to make sure everybody's like on point. Right. So you got to be on your game, straight up.
Always. This is a full-time gig, even on the weekends as well. You just sit there eating dinner, watching TV, like, dang, this apartment is starting to fall apart again.
I got one day to do that. That's Saturday. Sunday, I'm at least a half a day preparing for the week, work week, right? But I mean, it is what it is, right? Like if you eat, breathe, live, like you're absolutely right. You're going to have to commit to this thing 110%, right? You got to live, breathe. This is your baby, right? And it is what it is.
Yeah. And speaking of evolution, we've been going through so many changes with our social climate and COVID. I'm very curious, I know there should be a lot of people purchasing Poker Tables, just, creating those relationships with their family members and stuff. How have you seen your company and the culture in your company change since COVID has happened? Because I'm sure, there's a lot of fear within employees and just people in general, business owners in general. And so have you had to really up the game in your leadership skills? And, has the company culture changed in any way since COVID has started?
That's a great question. And before I jump into that, talking about organization development, I do have to give you guys a huge shout out just for Asian Hustle Network. I saw it from the infancy and what it's doing. And you guys, I see that you guys are also growing and maturing and evolving as leaders. What do you do with these tens of thousands of people that are waiting for this thing that they all gravitate towards, right? So I know that that's no easy task. So much props, much love to you guys for building this thing out, because it's really cool to watch from the sidelines.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, George.
Right. So in regards to your question, during COVID, it's pretty interesting because usually this is our slow season. People are out vacationing and doing stuff. So in terms of sales, it's actually sort of, we're seeing increased numbers. Not that it's a good thing. It's just the thing, right? Other industries, you have hard hit industries, and you also have winners coming out of this thing. The bike industry, for example, is like freaking bananas right now, right? One of our consulting clients, they are going to 3x their revenue. They're a pretty large bike company down in Southern California, and their sales literally just went right, absolutely off. They can't keep anything in stock. Apparently, Shimano right now, that makes the components, they're back ordered into 2021. There's like just no bikes available, period, in the U.S. Right. So there's some winners and losers shaking out of this thing, but in terms of what we had to do, what I had to do in terms of adjusting, it was really, you had to move quickly on how to manage and organize your organization when everybody is virtual and works from home. Right. So immediately we went to work. We created our virtual commandments, which is how we show up. Right. An agreed upon set of how we show up as a group, because I want to give you, I'm going to give you the freedom and to work from home. I don't want to micromanage you, but what are some of the things that we agree on as a group, right? Around accountability, around visibility, around trust, right? And they came up with that as a group. I just facilitate. A lot of my work now is just facilitating them to pull the answers that they agree on, right? Because it's not a top-down thing. It's what do we all agree on? And if this aligns to our values, okay, cool, right? Everybody, is that it? That's the agreement, that we go from there, right? So after making that virtual commandment of how to work from home, really hasn't been much issue. We haven't seen productivity drop. We have a small crew here in the warehouse still fulfilling stuff. They're doing their 6 feet, and they're, it's a big warehouse, so it's not that many people in there. It's fine. But the e-commerce team, they're all remote, and it's all good. Everyone's healthy. Everyone's just staying safe. And, we're actually just working really hard because right now there are a lot of opportunities out there in this home gaming space.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing. Well, that's all. It all goes back to your leadership skills. So,
and people just embracing the new normal, you know, I think given the pandemic situation, there's going to be a lot of demographical changes because people are figuring out that productivity doesn't mean that you have to be in the office. Yeah, something for all of us to like sort of readjust to.
Yeah.
Right. So that, at the beginning of it, I think they're still shaking out what the new office, like standard office layout's going to be, right? It used to be open space with, community seating, like that's now got to change. And do you keep, the same amount of square footage, or do you downsize? Like there are a lot of like considerations and questions that business leaders have to figure out right now. But I kind of love it because we were sort of going in this direction anyway. My dream was to build a e-commerce company where, you had more flexibility.
Yeah.
Right. So this just kind of, facilitated a little bit faster. I think it doesn't matter what you do right now, you better have a direct-to-consumer e-commerce strategy in place like yesterday, right? Those are the people that are going to survive. People that are still trying to figure out, like the old way of pre-COVID way of doing business, I think you're just hanging on, and it's a matter of time.
Yeah, you have to readjust to different times, especially during this time where it really forces everyone, not just entrepreneurs, to like rethink their life. It's like a lot of people right now are thinking, should I continue staying in a big city? Because now the remote work is normalized pretty soon. Like, do I have to stay somewhere super expensive, or you always constantly have to think about how you're going to pivot to different times too, because in every single downturn, there's always an up upswing and positive pivot that you can always make. And if you're
For
stuck
sure.
in one way, you're gonna fail. And that's just not during a downturn. It's like anything,
Yeah.
when you're facing disruption, what do? You have to pivot.
So, that's a great segue to something I do want to throw out there for that might be of some value for the listeners. So, before you pivot and before you know how to pivot, I think it's very important for companies, it doesn't matter what size, to understand sort of your core value discipline. You got to really understand what you do extremely well, right? And then you can leverage that as an advantage, right? So generally there are three core value disciplines, right? It's either you are customer intimate, right? So you're very customer facing, or you're operationally excellent, right? That would be something like an Amazon. That would be something like, Amazon, or you would be, the third one would be innovation driven, right? So you would be like a Tesla. Right. That's how you create your value, right? You have to understand, because not every company can do everything well.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll just give a quick shout out. So my girlfriend runs a plant business, pearlsplants.com. If you want some cool plants, go to pearlsplants.com. But what she does,
I love that plug.
really good plants. But what she does is for every order, she'll write a handwritten note.
Yes.
Right. Which is like freaking bananas. Some of the plants are like, not too expensive. They're like $5. I'm like, you're going to spend you're going to spend time to write a note for a $5 plant. She's like, that's what I do. Right. That's customer intimate. Right.
Yeah.
Now, operationally excellent is like, I can get the thing to you the next day. That's Amazon Prime. Right. That's doing things like just super efficient, better than your competitors. Right. And innovation driven is you always come out with the new shit.
Right.
So if you're talking about adjusting to COVID, and the secret here is this, right? So your core value discipline, you only have to be really amazing at one of those three things.
Yeah.
You pick one. Is it innovation? Is it customer intimacy? Or is it OpEx? Right? Pick one. Be the best at that. And then you just need to be average on a second. That's it. Right? Nobody can do three things well. It's impossible. Right? So you do one thing really well, and you do the other thing above average. And the third thing, you just kind of like, right? But that's how companies, so if you know what your core value discipline is, then you can now understand, all right, what are the moves that I have post-COVID, and how do I leverage that? And you will be in a position where to capitalize, because there's going to be a lot of companies going out of business.
Yeah.
Right? So the more that you know where you stand and where your value is, that's going to keep you in the best position, like coming out of this thing.
100%, man.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with that statement. We're so aligned with that side.
Yeah, love that. And so, what's one advice you can give to an aspiring entrepreneur? We have a lot of entrepreneurs in AHN who are in e-commerce. And so, I'm really curious, what's one advice you can give to an aspiring entrepreneur? It can just be in general, or it can be in e-commerce.
No, I'll this is great. So in general, it both applies, right? So the mental game of being an entrepreneur, I think that is something that only people that have gone through it understand, this emotional roller coaster. Right? And this format was first taught to me by Cameron Herold. He was the COO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, one of the amazing speakers, right, that you're going to run into. Google him. But he came up with this thing where it's the entrepreneur's roller coaster. Right. So at the bottom, right, you have uninformed optimism. That is, the sky is all blue. I came up with this idea. It's going to be fucking amazing. I'm going to make $1 billion. It's going to be freaking awesome. And then you work, right? At some point, some issues are going to come up that you didn't anticipate. Right. And then you'll sideline the shit out of you.
Yes.
Right. And then now your uninformed optimism turns into informed pessimism.
Right.
You're going down. You're like, oh shit, no, it didn't work out the way that I thought. Holy shit. Right? And then you're going to start crashing. And at the very bottom of that crash is a point called the crisis of meaning. You're like, holy shit, what did I do? right? And at crisis of meaning, you have two directions you can go. You can either crash and burn, keep going this way, or you'll figure it out, right? With a peer group or whatever, talk to your friends, you figure it out, and you realign, and then now it starts going back up, and now it becomes informed optimism.
Right.
Right. So this loop, right, happens over and over, and within this loop, there can be a roller coaster within a roller coaster.
Right.
Right. So if you just understand, like, this is what you got to be, you're going to be in for uninformed optimism, informed pessimism, crisis of meaning, and informed optimism. Right. If you know this, you'll actually know how to make decisions when you feel that way. When you feel like, holy shit, it's helpless, shit's crazy, you better not make any large decisions. Like, just chill the fuck out, go on a vacation, go hide under your desk, whatever, right? But don't be making any decisions. But on the converse side of that, if you have like uninformed optimism, you better not be signing leases, you better not be taking out lines of credit, right? Because what you're thinking isn't what it is, right? So just know that there's this roller coaster, and it just repeats over and over. So that's why, like, entrepreneurship is so sort of manic and so bipolar. One day you're like, oh my God, I'm king of the world. And then the next day you're like curled up in a ball on the floor, right? Like, literally.
I have my spots on the floor. I agree.
Right. If you haven't curled up in a little ball on the floor, then I call your bullshit. You're not for real.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur.
Yeah. Love that. Very, very sound advice. All right, George. It was amazing learning about your story, hearing about your entrepreneurial journey. For our listeners, in order for them to learn more about you, how can they reach out to you? How can they find out more about you online?
You know what? I'm just going to throw it out there. You can just email me direct at george@bbopokertables.com.
Wow.
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm here to answer any questions. And what I'd like to, here's a little selfish plug. What I'd like anybody that is interested in sort of e-commerce or any of the topics that we talked about today, shoot me a line. If there's something that we can do together, I'm always looking for great talent, right? That's probably the only thing that I want to plug. But I'm here. Shoot me a message. I'll do my best to reply.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah. Thank you for being on the show,
Yeah.
George.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much for taking
this
the
was
time
fun.
for the show.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Absolutely. And hopefully we'll be able to sneak a drink in or get a Korean, bite again at the Korean restaurant.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Thank you, George.
Cool, guys. Cheers.
Hey, guys. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe to the show.
We would like to get to the top 10 on iTunes, so be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We release an episode every single Wednesday, so stay tuned.
Thank you guys so much.